You check your phone. Nothing. But the checking wasn't random. It was for a specific reply. From a specific person. That empty screen is somehow pointed at someone who isn't even there. Think about what just happened in your head. Not the disappointment. The direction of it. Your want had an address. That's strange, if you actually sit with it. A rock doesn't want anything, from anyone. A river doesn't reach toward a destination, it just falls downhill, indifferent to where it ends up, carving whatever path gravity happens to hand it. Matter, left alone, isn't about anything. It just is. But you are never just sitting there. Even bored, even half asleep, some part of your mind is aimed at something. A memory. A worry. A person who hasn't texted back. Even right now, hearing these words, something in you is oriented toward what comes next, leaning slightly forward into a sentence that hasn't happened yet. In 1874, a philosopher named Franz Brentano noticed this and gave it a name that sounds clinical but isn't: intentionality. Not intention, like a plan you make on purpose. Intentionality, the property of being about something. Every belief is about a fact. Every fear is about a threat. Every craving is about the thing craved, even before you've seen it, touched it, or confirmed it exists at all. Brentano called this the mark of the mental. His claim was specific and a little unsettling. Aboutness is the one thing that only happens inside minds. Not in rocks. Not in rivers. Not, as far as anyone can prove, in anything that isn't conscious. What would it even take for a rock to be about something? You want coffee before you smell it. You're afraid of a conversation that hasn't happened yet. Your phone sits there, and it isn't the screen that's empty. It's the specific shape of who you were hoping to see. Even your hand knows this before you do, reaching for the phone a half second before you've consciously decided to check it again. Where does that direction come from? Notice how many of your ordinary moments already work this way, once you start looking. You flinch at a sound before you've identified what made it, but the flinch is already leaning away from something specific. You scroll past 100 faces and stop on one, not because it's objectively different, but because some part of you was already searching for it. You walk into a room and your eyes find the one person you know before you've consciously looked for anyone at all. Even boredom has a shape. It's not nothing. It's a low, dull reaching toward anything else, aimed at absence itself, restless in a very specific direction. What already knew where to look? Nobody has ever fully answered that. Not because it's a small question, tucked away in some corner of philosophy nobody visits. Because it might be the question, the seam where physical stuff turns into something that reaches beyond itself. A nerve firing is just a spark moving down a wire. The wire doesn't know what it's for. It has no destination built into it, no name written on the end of it. And yet somehow, out of exactly that wire, a craving arrives that is unmistakably, specifically aimed, like the spark reaches its end and keeps going anyway, straight at a target the wire was never built to see. What flips a spark into a want? Here's where it gets stranger, not simpler. 25 centuries before Brentano wrote a word, a very different tradition arrived at something close to the same discovery, from a completely different direction entirely. In early Buddhist teaching, most directly in the Nibbedhika Sutta, the Buddha names a mental factor called cetana, usually translated as intention or volition. Not just a raw impulse, the way hunger might feel like a raw impulse. A directedness. The thing that turns a bare sensation into a reaching toward or a pulling away. Sound familiar? Cetana isn't philosophy built to solve a puzzle from the outside. It's a map, built from close, sustained attention to the actual texture of a mind, moment by moment, by people whose entire practice was watching thought arise without immediately being swept into it. And what that map finds, independently, is almost the same shape Brentano found from his armchair in Vienna, that the defining feature of a mental state isn't what it's made of. It's what it's aimed at. Same finding, from opposite directions. What does that tell you? Notice you're already testing this against your own mind right now, checking whether it sounds true or not. That checking is itself the thing being described. Can you even step outside the reaching long enough to look at it from a neutral distance? Two traditions. No contact with each other. Centuries apart, continents apart, starting from completely different questions, one from logic, one from meditation. One working from a desk in Europe, one working from silence under a tree. And they land in the same place anyway. Mind is the thing that points. What are the odds of that, working entirely alone? Cetana goes a step further than Brentano does, in one specific way worth pausing on. In this teaching, that directedness isn't neutral. It's the seed of what shapes you going forward. The reaching itself is treated as a kind of action, with consequences, not just a passive pointer relaying information about the world. You don't just happen to notice the phone is empty. Something in you reaches toward that absence, and the reaching leaves a trace, however small, in what you're more likely to reach toward next time. That convergence is worth sitting with for a second, because it's not the kind of agreement you get from two people copying each other's homework. It's the kind of agreement you get when two people, working entirely alone, keep bumping into the same wall in the dark. What wall, exactly, were they both bumping into? Sit with your own craving for a moment. Not the object of it, the craving itself, the reaching. Where does the reaching start? Not where does it land? Where does it begin? Before you've decided to want anything at all. You probably can't find the seam. Nobody can. Watch closely enough and the wanting seems to already be underway before anything you'd call a decision shows up. It's just there, already pointed, the way a compass needle is already pointed before you've asked it anything. Where was it pointing before you existed to ask? That's the part that should bother you a little. Because here's the thing about staying with ideas like this one. This is the kind of question that rewards sticking around for more than just one video. If this is your first time here, there's a new one of these most weeks, working through exactly this territory. The edges where mind, machine, and old contemplative maps all seem to be describing the same strange thing from different angles. Worth staying for. Now, an odd complication. Something that isn't a mind at all has started behaving as if it points to. What would it even mean for something like that to want anything? In 2016, an AI system called AlphaGo, built by a team led by David Silver, played a move in a game of Go that no human had ever played in that exact position. A move so unexpected that commentators watching live assumed it was a mistake. It wasn't. Move 37, as it came to be known, behaved exactly like something reaching toward a specific outcome. Toward winning? Reaching toward what, exactly, if nothing was ever home inside it? Nobody claims AlphaGo wants anything the way you want coffee. But nobody has ever pointed to the missing ingredient either. The extra thing that would prove your reaching is the real kind, and its reaching is just a convincing performance of the same trick. Most days, none of this matters. You want your coffee, you get your coffee, the wanting does its job and disappears quietly into the doing. The seam stays hidden because nothing ever forces you to look directly at it. How often does anyone actually catch it? But sometimes it does force itself into view. You catch yourself mid-reach, hand already halfway to a phone that hasn't buzzed, mouth already halfway to a sentence nobody asked for, and for one strange second, you can see the reaching happening before you can find a reason for it. A craving that outlives its object. You get the coffee, and the wanting is somehow still there, restless, already reaching for the next thing before this one has even finished arriving in your hand. A grief that stays pointed at someone long after there's nothing left to reach toward, no reply that's ever coming. A fear that keeps aiming itself at a danger that's already passed, hours or years ago, and simply won't stand down. The direction doesn't switch off just because the target is gone. Reaching toward what, exactly, once there's nothing left to reach? If your wanting were simply about the object, a clean arrow, cause and effect, fired and done, it should end the moment the object arrives, or dissolve the moment the object disappears. It doesn't. It behaves less like an arrow and more like that same compass needle from before. It keeps trembling toward north long after you've stopped needing directions, long after there's anywhere left to go. That should sit uneasily. Not because it means you're broken. Because it means the needle was never fully in your hand to begin with. The most familiar thing about being a mind, that your wanting reliably points where you think it points, might not be as settled as it feels from the inside. How would you even test that? Here's the harder version of the question, and it's worth actually staying with it instead of resolving it too fast. If a machine can act exactly as if it wants something, with nothing behind it that anyone can confirm is truly about anything at all, how would you ever know your own wanting isn't running the same trick? Not a lesser version of aboutness. The same one. Just happening to be running on something that's alive, instead of something built. Nobody who has looked closely at this, not the philosopher working it out through pure logic, not the tradition built entirely around watching the mind up close for thousands of years, not the engineers who watched their own system reach toward a win they never explicitly told it to want, has come back with a clean answer. That's not a gap waiting patiently to be filled in by more research. It might be the one place where looking harder simply doesn't make the seam any more visible. Some questions get smaller the closer you look. This one doesn't. You'll check your phone again. Later today, probably. Maybe within the hour. And for a moment, before you even register what you're doing, some part of you will already be reaching toward a name, a reply, a version of the screen that isn't the one actually in front of you. The needle will already be turning before you've decided to look down at it. That reaching will feel like the most obviously yours thing in the world. See if you can still be sure of that the next time it happens.